Hey everybody, it's Mike here. Today we're talking about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, which originally released on the PC November 19th, 2024, and it's recently released on PS5 December 8th, 2025. So I'm going to tell you my thoughts, really if it's worth it for, more of a casual player like myself. Again, I'm not big into simulators such as like flight sims. Like I love sim games, but I've never really thought to try out a flight sim. So I gave it a shot, and boy, is this thing a treat. This game is almost, I would say it's a game. It's more of a game than I'd say like an actual simulator because, yeah, you can skip, like, you don't have to take off every time, which there's tons of quality life of features like that. So you don't have to taxi your plane. You can fast forward time. So, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy the gaming aspect of this because this is almost like a tourism simulator. I was actually, sitting with my wife yesterday, exploring the various monuments. So last summer we went to Italy. So we're looking at the Colosseum, the Pantheon, various other, buildings we saw in person to see them in real time. So this game actually captures, I guess, from satellite images, real time of how the Earth looks. So even if there's like a hurricane going on or something, you can go fly right into it. In real, like, it's really amazing, this game, and it will really take your breath away, and it's a lot more than I expected. I came into this not knowing much. I haven't played too many flight sims. Maybe when I was a kid, I played with the original flight sim, but I can't tell you how good a value this game is for what it is. That being said, there are some different versions of this game which you just want to be mindful of. So you got your standard edition, which has 70 aircraft and 150 handcraft airports. So again, you still have the other airports in the game. They're just more detailed. You have the deluxe edition, which is 80 aircraft. So you have 10 more aircraft and five more airports at 155 airports. The premium deluxe edition has 95 aircraft and 160 airports. And the Aviator Edition has 125 aircraft and 160 airports. And boy, is that Aviator Edition expensive. And I'm going to tell you right now, unless you turned your room into some sort of cockpit and are a hardcore flight sim, you are not going to get your money's worth paying right off the bat getting the Aviator Edition. I would recommend getting the standard edition. Play the game, and if you enjoy it, you can always upgrade to the Aviator Edition, the Premium Deluxe Edition. But again, in the Standard Edition, you still have, those trademarked aircraft that you expect to see in a flight sim. So you have like your Boeing 747, and then you have like your Cessna, so your little planes. So honestly, I see no reason to go anything above the standard. Those are for your hardcore players. So I just want to get that out of the way, just so you get your value for your money. Don't bother going anything above the standard edition unless you are an absolute flight sim nut. So back to the game again, just flying around this world and just seeing how it looks in real time. We were just flying even over the Vegas Strip, and certain parts of the world have a little bit more detail than other areas of the world, as you can see. So, for example, the satellite images of Italy were okay, but they weren't even close to the detail you'd find in areas such as like New York or Las Vegas. You can even see, like, for example, the logo Mandalay Bay, um, and the various casinos there. So it's really something else to explore this game. It's almost like a tourism simulator. So look at where you want to explore in the world, for example. And in terms of the flight sim aspect of it, playing on a controller, they definitely simplified things. That's why it's definitely more of a game than a simulator. So if you're looking to kind of use this as, flight training, you would definitely need to get the correct equipment for that. I know there's specific, controllers that are better for that. But this is in terms of the game itself and the quality of life you're going to get. Like, so there's a career mode. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with the career mode. Again, you start off with a private pilot license, you get into your commercial pilot license, and eventually into your airline and jet airline pilot license. and then the last one is your heavy airliner pilot license. And as you expect from like a flight sim career mode, you're going to progress through training and missions, you earn your licenses, you build your reputation, and you unlock different specializations. You can do aerial firefighting, search and rescue, VIP charter flights, heavy cargo transport. So you build your own aviation company eventually, and eventually you build a fleet and you manage everything from your flights, and from flying your small typical Cessna plane to flying your large, 747 airliners. So yeah, you're going to have to manage your finances, acquire aircraft, and you tackle different realistic scenarios which kind of vary in difficulty. So there's quite a bit to it. This game can also provide you assists, which I appreciate for those who aren't very knowledgeable about, flying and stuff like that. So this is a very good way for, someone who doesn't know much about flying to kind of have a rudimentary knowledge on what it takes to kind of, get a plane off the ground and the various instruments you'd find in a cockpit. But otherwise, this game is a great time. I'm telling you, this game had me at awe, just flying through the various monuments and you know, flying through the Statue of Liberty, at seeing it at such high detail. And mind you, for the PS5, they actually added various packs to kind of update how the world looks. So I'd recommend picking up those right away. On PS5, however, there's no free aircraft to download at this time as of release, so that would have been great. But you know what? The 70 aircraft you get with the standard edition, you're going to be that's going to keep you more than enough busy. And let me tell you, this game will have you in absolute awe. There's something special about actually flying to your actual house, and you could even spawn directly on your house. You don't even have to take off from any airport or anything. And you could even get out of your plane and walk around your house in real life as it looks like in an upgraded satellite imaging. And it's absolutely amazing. This game gives you a perspective of the world that very few people have. And it gives you a sense of freedom, which you aren't able to obtain, regularly. You can have access to certain points of in areas of the world where you normally wouldn't be able to fly to. For example, you can explore, the heck, if you really want to, you can go to Epstein Island. You can go to Sentinel Island. That's one of the Forsaken Islands, which you're not allowed to explore. You can go anywhere you want. You can go to Antarctica. And just seeing the world in this lens is truly breathtaking. And as I said before, it's really something else, especially, I just recently had a whole trip in Europe. So, flying around, areas that, have I explored in real life. And they also have this free cam mode. So, beyond flying over it, you can actually, explore the streets and stuff like that through a free camera. And there's like a really cool photo mode as well. So, for those who love photo mode, this game has a lot to offer. And I don't think I've had this much fun using a photo mode since like Gran Turismo 7. So that says a lot. And the attention to detail is just really impressive. For example, I was just doing some free roam around Vegas, and I was just surprised on the amount of detail on each building. Like for example, even going by Bellagio, the large casino resort, they even had the fountains working like they do in real life. And oh man, that moment really did it for me. And then you have this challenge mode, which is called Challenge League, which you kind of do various challenges. For example, one of the challenges right now is, doing a low flight on the Alps with a jet. So that's a really cool thing to kind of change it up. And aside from that, honestly, you're going to ultimately get the most value out of free flight mode. At least I am. I enjoy the career mode and the progression side of things, but there's just something awesome about flying around the world with live weather and real-time dynamics. So for example, like I said, if how the weather is in real life would reflect how it turns out in the game. The world is your oyster, and if the world is at your fingertips, literally in a controller. And now I know I'm glazing this game a lot, and I'm definitely saying this game is not definitely not perfect. For example, you're definitely better off if you have a very powerful PC. I would definitely recommend getting it there, especially there's more equipment to kind of actually simulate, a flight. So on PC, and let's be honest, you're going to be getting a lot more frames. This game caps a little bit over 30 FPS, or I believe on base PS5, it stays at a stable 30 FPS, and it looks fine and it runs fine. But you're not going to get that PC level quality. Again, there's a lot of texture pop in because these textures need a render as they're being streamed. So keep that in mind. But that also helps the PS5 version have a very small file size. So when you initially download this game, it's like 8, 10 gigabytes. So it's not going to take too much of your console space. So that's something I definitely appreciate. And there is definitely some texture pop in. Again, the 3D world maps and the imaging is not perfect. So you're going to have certain parts of the world that definitely don't look as close to as good as other parts. And that you expect that, right? This is all from satellite images. And another thing to keep in mind, and this is actually very huge. So this game requires connectivity because, it includes the entire world and scenery and live data. It's all streamed. This kind of makes offline play undoable, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind is this game will eventually expire. They'll eventually close the servers. I don't see them doing it anytime before the next 10 years, but it's definitely something to keep in mind when you buy this. This type of game definitely won't last forever, right? But this is definitely something to enjoy while you have it. Another thing to keep in mind in terms of transitioning this game to console is just the controls itself. So, the flying of a plane is very complex. And don't get me wrong, they definitely simplify it for you and they give you assists. But, for those who kind of want that full simulation experience, again, definitely go the PC route. Landing a plane with a controller is definitely challenging and it can be done. It can be done, definitely, but it's definitely has its challenges. So you're definitely going to need quite a bit of practice, especially transitioning to a controller. It's not as intuitive as obviously having like a keyboard. But I think they did a very good job transitioning this game to a controller, that being said. So definitely don't get me wrong there. I think this game is something special. There's really nothing like it. It's pretty much, like I said, the world at your fingertips. I definitely recommend this game pretty much to anyone who enjoys, exploring the world, interested in tourism and stuff like that, or interested in flights. And again, I recommend the standard edition. Don't go for those higher editions. It's really not worth the money anyways, and you get a very solid selection of vehicles with the standard edition. So I definitely wouldn't recommend you going, spending, 100 to 200 extra dollars just to, get, maybe 40, 50 different aircraft. And as you can see, like there is a very good variety of aircraft in this game already. So definitely not a requirement that you do that. I would avoid, unless for your hardcore flight simmer, it's definitely not worth it. But anyways, that's for this one. I'm definitely recommending this one. It's definitely a great surprise, this game. I did not expect to get this much value from this game. I'm going to be streaming this game and I'm going to hopefully be getting better at flying again. So yeah, this is a very pleasant surprise. I never thought I'd get so into a game like this. I just tried it out and I'm completely hooked. And I think it's really something else. It really is. So otherwise, that's it for this one. If you like this video, please consider checking out my channel and subscribing. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.